Welcome to Retirement GPS, navigated by Synergy, your roadmap to a secure and confident retirement. Each week, we explore strategies, stories, and planning frameworks designed to help you navigate the complexities of life after work. From tax planning to investments, income strategies to risk management, our goal is to give you the clarity and confidence you need to make informed decisions. But retirement isn't just about the numbers. It's also about lifestyle, purpose, and peace of mind. We're here to guide you through both the financial details and the personal dimensions of this next chapter. Let's chart today's course.
Welcome back to episode 6 of the Retirement GPS podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Zaharchek, certified financial planner and founder of Synergy Retirement Planning.
And I am Zane Belsack, associate planner here at Synergy. So this episode kicks off a two-part series on a topic that really hits close to home for a lot of people: how to know if you're truly ready for retirement. And just so you know, this is our first part series in this podcast. This is the first time we're doing a two-part series.
We meet a lot of people in our office who are within 5 years of retirement. We do like to start working with people 5 years, 10 years out of retirement. In fact, we get people who come into the office and say, I'm retiring tomorrow. Literally, that has happened to us. And many of them have done the work. They've saved diligently, they paid down their debt, and they even started to dream about life would be like in retirement. But there's one question that lingers. Am I really ready? So let me tell you a story. A few years ago, we met with a couple named Matt and Teresa. And on paper, they looked like the picture of readiness. They had a strong savings portfolio, minimal debt, and both had strong Social Security income down the road when they were ready. But despite everything looking great financially, they were really hesitant. They didn't feel ready. Teresa told us, we're afraid of making a mistake. What if we leave too early? What if we miss something big? And I like to tell people in retirement, you've never done this before, right? And if you do it right, you only do it once, which means nobody's had any practice. That kind of uncertainty, doing it for the first time, is more common than you might think. And the way Matt and Teresa feel is the way most of our people feel. It's not always about the numbers. It's about the transition. It's emotional. It's practical. And yes, it's a little scary. That's why we created what we call the Retirement Glide Path. It's a 5-year framework to help people prepare for their transition into retirement. Step by step, year by year. We walk members through it every day. And today, we're going to walk you through it.
And Ryan, I really love that the glide path goes way beyond money, especially for a couple like Matt and Teresa. It's not just about how much do I need, it's what needs to happen to feel calm and confident about that next chapter.
Yeah, exactly. And let's dive into the first year of the path. So we're going to take this year by year, 5 years out from your ideal retirement date. So at year 5, looking to retire in 5 years, we want to establish a foundation. This is the time to lay the groundwork. 5 years out of your retirement, you've got to take time to make thoughtful changes without the pressure of the countdown. And that's what that 5 years gives you, is the lack of pressure. So the first thing we want to focus on is a debt payoff strategy. We're going to take a look at your remaining debt, and that could be a mortgage, it could be a car loan, it could be just some lingering credit cards. Now, we don't believe that retirees need to be 100% debt-free, but we do need to understand what payments they're going to be carrying and how that will impact their retirement. Now, we don't believe that retirees need to be 100% debt-free, but we do need to understand what payments they're carrying and how that will impact their retirement. We want to have all debt paid off, including a home mortgage. And if we can't get the home mortgage paid off because there's 5 years to retirement and $300,000 left on the mortgage, then we'll talk about other strategies and try to get the remaining debt paid off. But most importantly is, let's reduce debt where we can, and let's talk about what we're willing to retain. Should you refinance? Should you accelerate payments? Or if your interest rate is low enough, and a lot of people are falling into this category because they refinanced 5 years ago, they have a 3% mortgage, and even though they have a low mortgage balance, they could pay it off, maybe that's not the best strategy for them. These are conversations worth having now, not later, because with 5 years, you still have time to just increase your monthly payments and have your mortgage paid off. We call it pinned to retirement, right? So if there's 10 years worth of payments left, if we can just make enough payments to get that mortgage paid off in 5 years, we've pinned it to retirement. will retire with no debt.
And that's why it's so important to talk about this, because everyone's story is different. Everyone has different situations and everyone has different end goals.
And it's why we don't like to get people into our office who say, I'm retiring tomorrow, because it doesn't give us this glide path to get these things in place. Debt is one of those things that can occur over time. Roth conversions are something that can occur over time if we have the time. But if we get people so late, by then a lot of those strategies, the ship has kind of sailed and the time is up. Next thing we want to look at 5 years out is long-term care planning. And this is a big one that often gets pushed off. A lot of times, by the time you reach 5 years out of retirement, what I mean by that is if you want to retire at 68, if you're 63 and considering long-term care insurance, there's a good chance it's too late or the premiums are too high for you. If somebody wants to retire in their early 60s and they're 5 years out, we still probably have a window where long-term care insurance is affordable. And we really don't need life insurance anymore. Probably don't need disability. These are insurances that we can let lapse, and we can put that money towards long-term care insurance so that when the time comes that you can't maintain the activities of daily living, things like bathing yourself and feeding yourself and transitioning yourself from bed, or you need to go into a facility, that you have a pool of money to support that. While you're still young enough and the premiums are affordable, we're going to review the options and see if it's a good fit for you. If insurance is the right fit, great. Then we'll talk to an insurance advisor and see if we can develop a plan. But if insurance is not an option because it's just way too expensive, then we're going to talk about a self-funding plan and how do we do that. The third item we're going to talk about 5 years out is tax diversification. This is not as much of a problem today, but it was a huge problem 10 years ago. People were coming to us looking to retire, and they'd have $2 million in a 401k. They'd have significant home equity, but very little cash in the bank, maybe $30,000 or $40,000, and very little after-tax investments, which means anytime they need money, they've got to pull it from a pre-tax retirement account that's going to have a tax liability associated with it. So we want to look at all of the assets. We want to look at how they're laid out, and do we have proper tax diversification? And if not, we start talking about Roth conversions. We start talking about saving in after-tax accounts and making sure that we build that tax diversification such that we can pull from different types of accounts during different environments. If tax rates are historically low, great, let's pull from pre-tax accounts. If tax rates are very high, we want to pull from those after-tax or tax-free accounts like Roths and keep our income in our control so that we can keep Medicare premiums down. We can keep our Social Security tax liability down. These are all the things that tax diversification does for us. And we can't do it quickly most of the time. We have to do it over time. So having 5 years to set this up is really valuable to us. Next, we'll look at your emergency reserve. So we talked about that in a prior episode. We want to make sure that we're teeing ourselves up to have that 6 to 12 months of emergency reserve in liquid cash in case an emergency were to come up in our retirement. And if somebody comes to us and has very little or no liquid cash, 5 years gives us the time to build that up, and we'll make that a priority. And then lastly, retirement visioning. So setting our goals. What does retirement look like? Do not underestimate this one. This is not financial, of course, and as financial planners, people do look at us kind of side-eye when we start talking about it. But we want to make sure that you are retiring to something, not retiring from something. Right? We know you're retiring from something. We know you're retiring from your job. But for most people, that's all they think about is I can't wait to get out of my job. I'll figure the rest out. The problem is happiness, and specifically retirement happiness, is tied to having a purpose in retirement. So we talk about that. We help people find that purpose in retirement. So what does retirement look like for you? How are you spending your time? What do you want your legacy to be? Are you going to be traveling and be volunteering and be helping your family and watching the grandkids? Are you going to be working part-time? What is a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning look like for you? So a clear vision will guide your financial decisions from here forward. And we always say at Zenergy that it's important, make sure that you're retiring to something, not just from something. So what are you retiring to?
And I tend to see this question be asked in a lot of meetings that we have. When someone gets clear on what they want their life to look like, it really becomes so much easier to know what to do with their money. That's why goals and values matter just as much as dollars and cents.
Yeah, and really in our planning process, we start with goals and values. We want to understand the goals and the things that are motivating you so that we can make sure that the money is being appropriated towards those goals. So let's talk about year number 4. So now if you're 4 years from retirement, This is all about reviewing the big picture. So now that the foundation is set, it's time to get into the structure. Year 4 is about zooming out and refining our overall strategy. First, we're going to look at estate planning. So are your documents in order? Now, part of our financial planning process is we'll always be looking at your estate plan, but when you're 4 years from retirement, there may be some new thoughts on estate planning, and there may be some new changes that need to be made. Making sure that we have a will, living will, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, these are foundational. Now we may be talking about trusts and charity and things that we want to put in place to make sure that not just our family and our loved ones are getting our money, but also maybe there's a way to leave money to a charity or a cause that's really important to us, but also benefit us as well in the short term while they're being benefited in the long term. Make sure that you review the beneficiaries on all of your retirement accounts and insurance policies. Again, this is almost annual for us, but at year 4, we really get very, very specific about this and targeted towards retirement specifically. We make sure that this legacy planning is aligned. Second thing we focus on in year 4 is your Social Security strategy. All right. We're not yet going to have a formal and finalized Social Security strategy. In fact, we typically don't have this until we're ready to collect Social Security, but now we're starting to develop that plan. So it may seem early, but it's really not, because Social Security is far more complicated than most people think. We want to run projections. Should you file early? Should you wait to full retirement age? Should you delay? What about spousal benefits? These decisions can have a significant impact on your lifetime income. For most people that we work with, their Social Security income is one of their biggest assets. It's probably their top 2 or 3 biggest asset. And I say an asset, not an income, because in order to generate the amount of income that most people do from Social Security, you need anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million portfolio to generate that kind of income. And for the people that we work with, that's a massive asset. So it's important to get that one right.
And a question that I'm sure all of our listeners are probably thinking, what age is full retirement age?
That's a great question, and full retirement age is different depending on your date of birth. For most people today, we're now at 67, which would be full retirement age, but it can be anywhere from 65 to 67 based on your date of birth. Next, let's talk about budgeting in retirement. So we want to start thinking about how much do we spend now, and then how much might we spend in retirement. Things will change. Most people kind of go off this general, I don't even know where this percentage came from. In fact, it frustrates me because a lot of people will come in and say, well, I think I only need 80% of what I spend today in retirement. And I can tell you that is objectively false. That is just not a good number to use when you're planning. Most people will spend less on certain things. You'll spend less potentially on clothing, on commuting costs, especially if you're working. You may spend less on eating out at lunches and that sort of thing, because when you were working, you spent more doing those types of things. But you're going to spend a lot more on leisure, a lot more on travel, a lot more on eating out dinners and things like that. Typically, that's what we see because you have a lot more time. And because you're working 40 hours or so per week, that's time that you're spending out doing things and being active and being leisurely. You typically don't spend money while you're working. When you're not working, you tend to spend money. So we really think it's about 100%. About 100% of what you spent prior is what you're going to spend in retirement, especially in the first 10 years or so. And the truth is that can increase dramatically if you have very ambitious travel plans. So a lot of people will take their travel budget from $5,000 or $10,000 a year up to $20,000, $30,000, even $50,000 a year. That's got to be part of that retirement budgeting. So start thinking about, again, this comes from your goals. What are your goals? If you really want to travel, if you really want to give to charity, make sure that's included as part of your budget and be realistic. If you only will travel first class, meaning I'll only fly first class, I'll only stay in the nicest hotels, don't budget $10,000 as a travel budget. Because I can tell you right now, one first class ticket round trip to Europe is going to eat almost your entire travel budget. So make sure that we're getting the right budget in place for the way that we want to travel, the way we want to do things. And start tracking monthly. We often suggest that clients run a retirement budget test. So if you start tracking your monthly needs today as if you were already retired, meaning what are the things that I would be doing if I were already retired? It's a great way to see where adjustments need to be made. And it's a great way to see what are the things I want to continue to do in retirement and think about the things I will do more of when I do retire. And then the last thing in year 4 that we start talking about are housing considerations. Where do you want to live? Will you downsize? Will you stay near your family? Do you want to be a snowbird and have a second home? Are home modifications needed so that you can age in place? Meaning, I'm going to stay where I am, but I might need to add a bedroom on the first floor so I don't have to climb the stairs later in life. Now may be the time to do that while we're working and we have the money. Thinking about these housing considerations are all things we do in year 4.
This is also a great year to check in with your spouse or partner. All really good points, but questions to think about. Are you both on the same page about their retirement timeline, about your lifestyle? I mean, over my time being at Zenergy, I've seen a lot of, I wouldn't say disagreements, but differing values. Are we expanding on our house? Are we modifying our basement? Are we moving down south? Are we doing more charitable giving? Are we traveling more? You'd be surprised how many couples assume they want the same thing, but haven't actually had the conversation. I'm sure Ryan can testify on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We do like to say sometimes we're as much marriage counselors as we are financial planners, just kind of getting alignment with who wants what. And if you know that you won't have alignment, because we actually had a great situation where, and this is a great example of this story, where there was a husband who was a commercial pilot. So he traveled all the time, his entire life, flying commercially. And his wife, who was a second marriage, they've only been married about 10 years, worked in Manhattan, and she commuted every day and traveled a bit, but didn't do as much travel. And she really wanted to travel in retirement, and he absolutely did not. So that was one of those things where they really were never going to meet in the middle. It was never going to be a situation where, okay, well, let's compromise. He did not want to travel, and she just would not give it up. We talked that through and made sure that they understood where the lines were, how much was he willing to do, if any, and how little she was willing to do, if there was any minimal. And what she decided to do was travel with friends. And that was the compromise that they had come to. And it was a fantastic compromise. So getting on the same path with your goals is really important. And if you're not going to be on the same path, then what is the compromise you're willing to make? So let's dive into year 3 now, which is building the infrastructure. So by year 3, things start getting real. You're now looking at the logistics and the mechanics of the execution of our plan. So the first thing we need to think about is the healthcare gap. If you're retiring before age 65, which we're finding a lot of people are doing today, and that's great. I'm glad to see that people are financially secure enough. They're getting the right things in place so that they can retire early. But the big challenge there is health insurance, right? And we know if you retire before 65, you're not going to be eligible for Medicare, and you've got a gap to fill with that health insurance. So will you use COBRA at least for the 6 months you're eligible for it? Will you go and buy a private plan? How much is that going to cost? Did we budget for that? Making sure that we talk those things through. Now, if you are 65 or older, doesn't mean that you don't have any challenges or that you don't have any decisions to make. You still have to develop a Medicare program and a Medicare plan for yourself. Medicare is great. The reason why people 65 and older have health insurance premiums $500 or less traditionally is because of Medicare. If you are 63 and you're not eligible for Medicare, your premiums are far more than $1,000 a month per person. So Medicare can really help offset that, but we need the right plan in place because we need to make sure you have Part A, which is free and you're eligible for without even signing up for it. Part B, which is paid and you do have to sign up for it. And then Part D is our drug plan, which most people will want to take advantage of. There's also a Part C option, which is a Medicare Advantage plan, which allows you to buy a private insurer to cover all 3 components that some people opt for. And it really just depends what you'd like. But you need all of that on top of a supplement plan to fill in the gaps, the things that Medicare won't pay for. And that's where a good supplement plan comes in place. All of that should run you less than $500 a month, depending on your income. Medicare Part B does have a premium plus up. It's called an IRMA. If you earn too much money, you're going to pay a much higher premium. So depending on how much money you're planning to earn in retirement, we can comfortably keep you under $500 for all of that per person. But the things it doesn't cover are things like dental, vision, and hearing. So if you need hearing aids down the road, if you need massive dental work, if you need glasses, that's all going to come out of pocket unless you go get private insurance coverage. And you just want to make sure you understand all of this and what do you have, what do you need, and what are you willing to accept as far as a risk. My mom just had some serious dental work and it cost her several $1,000s, and that was money she had to pay out of pocket. Are you prepared for that? Are you going to be ready for that? Do you have the emergency reserve ready to pay for that? And a good insurance agent can help you sort through and sift through all the differences and make sure that you have the right plan in place for when you retire. And that's why we talk to the insurance agent now, because even though you might not need it, you may be 2 or 3 years out, we want to have that plan. So when we say go, we're ready to go. Next, we're going to talk about distribution strategy. So we want to start building the framework of where of our retirement come from. And if we're doing the right things on tax diversification, we'll have a good selection of accounts to draw from to make sure that we're not paying too much in taxes. I always say, I want to control the tax rate of our retirees. We want to be in control. We don't want to let the government be in control. And if we have too much money in pre-tax accounts and RMDs hit at age 73, we have to take a certain amount of money out and we lose control of our tax bracket. We want to keep ourselves in control. That's what tax diversification does, and that's why the distribution strategy is so important to us. So how will we minimize those taxes? How much do you need monthly, and where is it going to come from? So we'll discuss this topic in a future podcast, but really important topic, and probably one of the more complicated concepts in retirement planning that most people just really can't do for themselves because they don't understand the nuances of each of the different accounts. Next, we'll look at investment realignment in year 3. So we probably will want to start thinking about shifting our investments to be prepared for income because growth is no longer our primary concern. Now, we probably have been doing this all along. We are almost certainly 3 years out going to be making a change because most market corrections, even the biggest ones, the Great Depression, the financial crisis, last less than 3 years. So making sure that at year 3, we are prepared for that massive market correction, that massive bear market, that massive recession or depression that may come up is really important for us. We will make sure that we discussed this in a previous podcast, but we probably will go into it in more depth, specifically related to retirement in the future. And then lastly, legacy and charitable planning. So if you do have designs on giving back to society, meaning giving to charities, giving to your church, it also may mean giving forward to future generations and to children and grandchildren. Let's build a plan for that. And 3 years out, we want to start talking about it. Now, it may not be something we're actually going to do yet because we want to make sure we have enough money for your retirement. And if things are tight or things are close, we probably don't want to be giving money yet. But if you do have retirement designs, we can start coming up with programs for the future that will take into account all of your wishes and all your desires for giving in the future.
This is all great stuff to think about, especially when you're coming close to retirement. But this is also a good year for a practice run, as we mentioned previously. Try living off your projected retirement income for a few months. You'll quickly see if anything feels tight or if you're honestly more prepared than you realize.
It's like test driving your lifestyle before you buy it. You get a do-over, so to speak, because if you're doing it and you're like, yeah, this is just not working, well, guess what? You're not in retirement. The plan's not all in place. We can make shifts at that point where later it's a little bit more difficult to do the fine-tuning. Speaking of fine-tuning, that's year 2. So year 2 is about fine-tuning and transition. So now we're getting closer. You're getting closer to your retirement. And this is the year for detailed cleanup. So we want to first finalize employee benefits. So we're going to look into sort of where are you on accrued vacation time, sick days, stock compensation, retirement benefits. You just don't want to leave money on the table. And for some people at some employment, they have a lot of sick days that are actually paid out at the very end. So we want to account for that as part of your net worth, as part of your lump. We also want to look at stock compensation. It may benefit you to, instead of retiring on December 31st like you planned, wait till March 15th because there's a stock grant that's going to be vesting and that stock is doing really well, and those are things that we can sell. So we want to look at all of that and start laying out exactly how that all plays into your larger plan. We're also going to be looking at long-term care and making a final decision on that. If we haven't already bought coverage, if you apply for long-term care insurance at too old an age, you're probably not even going to get approved for it. And if you do get approved, the premiums are going to be so high. We're talking about potentially $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year per person for long-term care coverage, that it's just not going to be practical. So we're going to hopefully by 2 years out have a final decision made on how we're approaching this and just make sure that strategy is in place. Next is housing execution. So if you're planning to move, downsize, or making renovations, we want to get those wheels in motion. I like to see renovations, like major renovations on a house, be made while people are still working. I know it can be a little difficult because you're managing contractors and workers and things like that in the house, but it also gives you the flexibility that if things run over, you're not beholden to a specific budget because you're in retirement and you don't have the flexibility. If you're still working, you can always either change plans, you can use some of your cash flow to pay for some of the overages that may come through. So getting that housing plan in place If we're buying a second home, doing that before we retire is typically good advice, and that's the type of thing that we'll look to do. And then emergency reserve top off. So like I said, if we don't have that emergency reserve exactly where we want it, this is a year where we're going to get it in place so that the year of retirement, we're not thinking about emergency reserve or worried about it. That's really important to us because, like I said, that's foundational.
And start thinking about what you really want your retirement to feel like. What's that 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning? What do your days look like? What's your schedule? Something really important is, where do you want to travel in year one?
Yep, because the time is coming up, tick-tock. You're coming up to a year before retirement, and if you don't have that thought through, this is not always about money. The money, I always say, is the easy part. The lifestyle is the hard part. Figure out what your purpose is, what is your passion, and where do you get pleasures. The 3 Ps are really important in your lifestyle.
You don't want to be bored in retirement.
No, I don't want to be bored before retirement, and I don't want to be bored after, that's for sure. Nobody should be bored in retirement. That's the goal. So year one, this is it. Countdown to retirement. Now we're counting in months, not years. This is the home stretch. So we need to make it count. We need to get it right. So we want to get our distribution plan in place. We want to know exactly how much money is going to be coming in. We want to know when it's going to start. A lot of people retire and they get paychecks for a couple of weeks, or they're getting a severance because they're taking a layoff package or something that they know may be coming. They're getting a big lump of vacation time that they didn't take, so that's getting paid out, and they may not need their money right away. Those lump sums may be sums that they can live off for a month or two. So exactly when are your distributions going to start? And then how are you taking your distributions? I'll say 98% of the people we work with take their monthly distributions every month on the first of the month. So it's like a once a month paycheck. It's a big lump of money that's transferred from their investment account right into their checking account, and it's what they use to live off of. Some people feel really strongly they still want the twice a month payment, so they don't have to manage throughout the month. So we pay them almost like a paycheck every other Friday. It's really up to you about what is the right way to distribute. We can set that up either way for people, but we want to make sure that we have that program in place and that's ready to go. Next, we want to file for Social Security. Now, filing for Social Security can be done up to 90 days prior to when we want to collect. So if our birthday is July, we can file in April and make sure that we get that filing done. And our first payment won't be until August, even though it's for July, because Social Security is paid in arrears. So your July payment will come the first week of August. It's important to know that because a lot of people, when they retire, they expect that Social Security check the first month they don't have an income, and it doesn't come. So we can compensate for that out of the investment accounts or out of savings, but we just need to know it. So talking that through and making sure we're comfortable with that is really important. Third, confirm your health insurance. Just make sure that we've got the right health insurance in place. We know what our plan is, and that if we're working with a Medicare broker, that broker knows exactly when things are supposed to start and things are seamless. We don't want to have any surprises when it comes to retirement, not having health insurance for a period of time. We want to contact our 401k or pension provider, because once we do retire or we're coming up to retirement, we want to begin the process of rollovers, paperwork, and payment set up for our pensions so that the pension is, it's very clear like where the pension is going every month, and make sure all that paperwork is properly filled out. And then formalize your retirement date with your employer. So you're going to be notifying your employer at some point. How and when you do that is at your discretion, of course. Some people will notify their employer 6 months in advance because they give them lots of time. Other people will want to wait until the last minute because they don't want to risk being let go before they retire. These are all things that are purely personal and relevant to the individual job and the career that you're in. But make the retirement date known when you're ready, and make sure you let HR know, and that way we can prepare to celebrate, and we can make sure that all the benefits that you're entitled to are coming to you.
And remember, this has really been a long process. It's been especially an emotional year. You're saying goodbye to colleagues, a routine that you've been going on for, depending on how long you've been working, maybe 30, 40 years, and maybe even a sense of identity. Give yourself permission to feel all of that.
Yeah, it is. It's a big day, and it's a day, to your point, that you've worked hard for. And you say it's been a journey. We've been talking in this podcast about a 5-year journey, but it's been a lifelong journey. Most people that retire have been working for 40 years or more, and it's very emotional time. Be prepared for that and be ready to step into that something new, which is the retiring to something. So let's talk about post-retirement, settling into your new life. After your retirement party is over, the real adjustment begins. So just make sure first distributions are confirmed. Make sure the income is arriving. We have two programs. We have a retirement glide path. We also have a retirement landing. So if you're working with Zenergy for 2 months prior to your retirement and 2 months after, we'll be calling you every other week to check on these things and just make sure things are running smoothly. And of course, you'll have our number that you can call us if there's any problems. Verify that health insurance is active. Lifestyle check-in. How is it going? Are you enjoying your time? Are there gaps in your structure or routine that need attention? Are you just feeling a little empty, a little hollow? Most people go through a bit of a honeymoon period, at least for the first 6 months or a year, where they're just glad to not have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and not have to run the rat race, or on Sunday night feel that stress of knowing I got to be up Monday morning. And that's great for a while. But to Zane's point, you don't want to retire and be bored. So after that wears off, just make sure that you've got those things in place that are important to you. Finalize any rollovers or transfers. So make sure that your 401k is rolled out of your employer into an IRA. Complete any transfers that need to be complete so that the money is in the places it needs to be to execute on your plan. Plan out your time. We've talked about this, making sure that your retirement days are filled. Adjust and adapt. So you won't get everything perfect out of the gate, guys. This is a process. Retirement is, you can plan it out as perfectly as you want, but like any vacation you may go on, if it's planned out perfectly, you still may want to adjust and adapt as things come up. That's okay. Stay flexible. Make small changes as needed. Retirement's not really an end point. It's a launching point. And the better the preparation, the smoother that launch, that transition will be.
So we hope that you guys learned something new about this whole process, whether 5 years out from retirement or 40 years out from retirement.
Thanks for joining us for episode 6. We look forward to continuing next episode. Please subscribe, turn on your notifications, leave us 5-star review. And until next time, stay intentional, stay on course, keep planning.
Thank you for listening to Retirement GPS, navigated by Zenergy. To explore today's topic further, visit our blog Mile Markers at zenergyretirement.com/blog, where we offer detailed strategies, examples, and downloadable tools to support your retirement journey. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Zenergy Retirement Planning for weekly insights, checklists, and planning reminders. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with someone planning for their future. Until next time, keep navigating toward a confident retirement. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as investment, legal, or tax advice. Listeners should consult their own financial, tax, and legal advisors before making any decisions. Zenergy Retirement Planning is a registered investment advisor located in Red Bank, New Jersey.